Hello guys, welcome to part 5 of this function analysis process, the last part, the practical part, right? Now guys, I just want to tell you a couple of points before we get into that part. You have taken, so you have till, I believe that till function analysis process you have understood everything. Now how to put that in a document, which is you generally call a transfer pricing document. How do we present that particular function analysis? So there is a set structure for that, right? It is not anywhere under the provisions where this structure has been given, but generally we follow this type of structure only when we are preparing the TP report. Now I'll share my screen to explain you that structure first, and then after we'll go with undertaking the live function analysis, right? And we'll also assume a case. If let me just assume the same manufacturing apparel wala case, and then accordingly I'll explain you what type of how we can devise that entire function analysis in given situation. Now let me just share my screen. Okay. Now guys, you can see the structure of function analysis under TP report is divided into 7 parts. There could be more parts also depending upon the case, but predominantly it is, the facts and the function analysis revolves around these aspects. So first is the value of transaction, that is the amount at which the transaction has happened. Second would be the nature and terms of the international transaction. Third would be the function analysis write-ups, that is the functions performed which you have to document in that part, right? Then fourth is the functional matrix, correct? Then it will be risk assumed that you have to write in the report. Then the risk matrix. So basically this functional matrix and risk matrix are nothing but a summary table of that entire functions and what are the role being played by both of the entities, right? Then assets being employed, and then characterization of the entities, right? So this is how entire things will be presented under the TP report. Now let me just, before going to work with AI, let me just prepare this structure before you so that you get an understanding of how we need to undertake the functional analysis or how we need to document the functional analysis. Now I'll just presume certain things here. Guys, before getting into the using the AI and getting into the function analysis part, I have assumed one of the very simple supply chain model so that I can make you understand till now what we have done and how it needs to be documented as per the above function analysis structure. Let me just open that supply chain model which I have designed right now, and appropriately I can show you that how we need to draft function analysis for the transactions which has been undertaken by the related parties. Now here in this case, as you can see here, there is this foreign holding company, and so it has its subsidiary in India which we have named as related party 1, right? Now what are the characteristics of foreign holding company is that it's a parent company, it owns tire manufacturing unit, it provides also technical know-how and designs for production of tires to this related party. Then it also provides its brand name for selling the products in the local market, right? And then it also sells raw material to its subsidiaries, like one of the subsidiaries is Indian party, and it also provides instruction or support as well as on marketing aspects. So at whenever any marketing support or guidance is required, or whenever any activity is being done by the foreign holding company for the benefit of all the subsidiaries, so it will provide that type of instruction or support to the entities as well, right? Now what are the characteristics of Indian party? So it's a wholly owned subsidiary. It is engaged in the manufacturing and manufacturing of rubber tires, and it sources raw material from local vendor as also from foreign company, right? So it sources raw materials from both the type of sellers, that is related party, non-related party vendors, right? And it sells the manufactured tires to third parties in India, or it might be overseas. We have just presumed right now India, right? So in particular, there are 3 transactions which are being undertaken between these two parties, right? So one is sale of raw material from foreign holding company by foreign holding company to the related party. Then there is this provision of technical know-how services from foreign company to the Indian party, and then there could be a royalty payment also by related party, as foreign company has provided its brand name to the Indian party to sell its product in India, right? So there could be this 3 type of transaction. Now practically what may happen, guys, somewhere if client is very raw or unorganized, he wants to set up appropriate transfer pricing policy, then he may come to you, right? And he will only explain the characteristic to you. All right, he will only say that he is doing the sale transaction, but these two transactions wherein the services are actually involved by the foreign party, for that there may not be any remuneration available, right, at that point of time. So as a transfer pricing consultant, you can first understand that what are the aspects and what are the role of these two entities in the entire supply chain. Supply chain, I mean to say that from production till the from production, sourcing, and usse bhi pehle designing till when you sell this when the Indian entity sells the goods to the third parties. So each and every process has to be first of all separated in a supply chain, and then appropriately what entity is playing what role in the supply chain you need to identify, and that is what we call accurate delineation of transaction. I hope that clarifies. Now, before getting into drafting of functional report, first we need to prepare the template of functional report, right? Functional analysis part under the report. Now let me just open the Word file, and where I'll be preparing that entire FAR. So guys, as you can see, I have opened here a file. I already prepared this file from scratch. Now as you can see that in this entire transaction, that entire model, we have taken one transaction for our analysis, which is purchase of raw materials from the AE, right? Now if you can see, I'm just going with the flow which I explained you earlier. Let me just also open that so that it is easy. So we understood that the value of transaction needs to be placed first under the functional analysis report, then after nature or terms of transaction, then after functional analysis write-up, and then after functional metrics, risk assumed and assets being employed, and characterization, right? These are the things which are required to be placed under the functional analysis when we do that particular part under the TP report, right? Functional analysis process. Now let me just tell you this thing. Now I have put here value of international transaction. Right now, what we are doing right now here is that we are analyzing the value of this particular transaction, right? Purchase of raw materials. But let me also tell you in practical scenario, when you come across such situation where there could be multiple types of also raw materials which could be purchased by the Indian party. It may happen in transaction. There are multiple types of goods, right? So under each and every type, there could be raw material also, So what you can do here is when you describe this entire transaction, that is nature of transaction, if every type of raw material is different, then you can, and you have the value of that raw material, you can quote here the prices. Else what may happen that if it is the same type of raw material that you have purchased, or probably the values of the other raw material purchases are not that way material, then you can combine that entire things and you can show it in one part also. Technically what we are required to understand is that even if it's a purchase of raw material simple transaction, it may also have sub transaction in that. So just for example, when we are taking this example pertaining to the tire industry, where tire raw material is used to manufacture tire are being taken, then one of the raw material could be the raw rubber, right? It could be a rubber thing, so that could be one of type of raw material. Then there could be wax, which is used in this industry. Then the molds. So such type of raw materials could be used in this industry, that you need to understand and judge from your end only, that whether you are required to show it separately or you can show it combinedly, right? Why it is better to show if possible separately, because every type of transaction are different, right? If it's a purchase of raw material, it's not just a purchase of raw material, but it's a purchase of raw material of type A, type B, type C. So if see, it's on your judgment only and on your basis only. If you think that you should separate that particular parts and show it in the table, that is in the nature of transactions, because every transaction will be treated as different, right? We need to delineate that transaction. That is what we learned in the earlier videos, right? And that is where you need to understand that it is better to present it separately, or you can combine if it is not possible. So in my certain case, as it has also happened that I combine the other things in under one roof, because there is no purpose, or there is no if I am using the methodology, the type of transfer pricing method that doesn't requires to get that particular transaction being separated. then I'll put that particular entire set in one particular line only, one particular statement only. You can see here the other option to present, right, where I have combined all the raw material types, right. So this is how also you can present, but the judgment will be on your end, what you are as a TP consultant. If you think, now suppose if this value of raw material, raw rubber is more than 5 crores, right, so 5 crores you can show it here. Then if a wax is also a major component of that raw material, then you can show the wax also here. If you are, benchmarking is a secondary part, but if you are showing these values also differently, it will be okay to show that values, right. I hope that clarifies. Also, there is one thing that when you arrive at a transaction value for this particular transactions, sub transactions, let me put it that way, then your value should be reconciled with the books of account, right. If you are excluding certain things from that particular value, then you should always have a reconciliation in your hand prepared before when you are submitting this TP report and when you are filing the form 3CB. Be clear on that part, that your value should match with the books of accounts, right. Now how will you do that? Now first is that in a transaction there could be taxes, there could be freight or any other charges which would have been levied apart from the main purchase transaction, right. So when you do that particular entry in books of account, then whatever you report here, right, there are two methods, there are two options. This is nothing nowhere given in the act what position you should take, but in general what we do is that we ensure that even if we are adding those and the charges we can map with that particular purchase, then we should also add that particular amount of charges, taxes or freight, etc., along with the purchase value, right, because that is also a transaction, right. But in case so it depends on case to case basis. If they are not separate, they cannot be mapped along with the transaction, then you can show it separately under the same table. And if you are excluding that, then you should put a notes that whatever you are excluding, that this is not considered right now as a part of transaction, as this has been directly paid. So in case of when you are importing goods on FOB basis, then you may the freight may be paid directly by you or by the other party, right. So in that case is, even if the book, or even if there is an entry in books of accounts, then you can separately show as a disclosure that you have not considered the freight amount in the above particular transaction which you are reporting. So that should be very clear, that should clearly come out from the report. If you can map the freight amount entirely with the transaction, add that. I would always suggest that rather not to disclose or not to report, just have a explanatory note to that entire table, so that it is easy for the person to understand, also for the officer to understand that what position you have taken, right. It is not misreporting, else if you don't report, it could create a misreporting issues, right. So you have to be prudent on your judgment that what type of transactions, what type of amounts you should include in the transaction value. Obviously the main transaction which has happened, that needs to be included, but apart from that, like forex could be one of the example, freight could be one of the example, any other charges which have been recovered by your party, that could be one of the example. So if that charges relates to the same purchase only, or even if it's a relates to same purchase but you cannot bifurcate between various purchases, then also you need to have your reconciliation beforehand when you finalize the TP report and when you finalize the form 3CB. I hope that clarifies. Now we come to the second part, which says about terms of transaction, right. Now what may happen in a purchase transaction is, because in India there is, I have seen in the local market, there is no practice of having an intercompany purchase agreement, right. So the client may come and may tell you that there is no requirement of having a purchase agreement, and they have not kept that purchase agreement, and they have not considered that also. But as an advisor, you should always advise to have also intercompany purchase agreements which defines the terms, roles, responsibilities and etc. clauses, whatever we discussed in the last video, right. So that is where you need to understand the terms of transaction, and you should always write that. You don't need to write entire clauses, but the main clauses which are for example like compensation, as I have shown you here, like compensation is the main clause, manner of payment, roles and responsibilities. So such type of clauses you should always show in your report, and whatever the main clauses under that agreement, that you should show in this here in this part of the report, right. I am not going by each and every clause because I have already explained, that has been already separately explained in the previous video. what should be the consideration under the agreement. See, it will be always better to show certain important terms and document that in this particular report rather than you giving the separately that intercompany agreement, because generally transfer pricing officers may ask for terms of transaction by way of agreement you are required to show, or probably by way of writing at that point of time, at time of submission or assessments you are required to show that part. So have a clear, if that thing comes out from your report only, then it is well documented. It can be said that. So document the terms of transaction also under part 2 of this functional analysis section entirely, right? Now we come to third part, which is called functional profile, right? Now we have to build a functional profile of the parties to the transaction. Now as you saw in this example, there were two parties of the transaction, right? Two parties to the transaction. So the transaction is purchase of raw material from your A, right? We are making this entire report from the Indian party perspective, right? As per the rule 92D or as per what we have read till today. So we are making this entire report where the Indian party is required to file form 3CB and submit this report to the department, right? From that perspective, or from that perspective also, that Indian party is undertaking functional analysis, we are preparing that entire report from that perspective. So for Indian party, it will be a purchase of raw material transaction, right? Now there are two parties to this transaction, right? A foreign company and an Indian party. Now let me tell you one thing. You need to draw up a functional profile of both the parties. But the functional analysis, now what is functional analysis? Functional analysis would contain three main parts: functions performed, risk assumed, and assets employed, right? So you need to draw up for each and everything that each and every function, what role has been played by which party, right? So as we discussed that day, that I will start with always. So this strategic decision making and corporate service function will always be common, and that is where I'll just come to the part where we discussed that functions that day. So when you go for a supply chain, then you may ask relevant questions, and under that questions I mentioned that you should ask questions on the strategic management and so strategic decision making and corporate service functions. So this could be so that is where you can document that particular functions here, right? Then after, under this tire manufacturing, as we see the supply chain, there could be R&D and designing functions as well, right? So this party would be taking the R&D or designing, the holding company. So you should mention that where this R&D is going to happen, or where this R&D happens, and where this entirely tire or structure, I mean whatever the product has been designed, right? Then the procurement of raw material. So how Indian party procures that raw material from A's, and if they are also procuring from non-related vendors, it should be mentioned here, right? Then how the production process goes on. So who is responsible for production, how the production is getting scheduled, how much amount of, you don't write to amount, but yeah, how the production gets done, right? That who supervises the production, etc. Such facts should be coming under this production head. Then quality check. Then who checks, who is responsible for checking of quality? Is the Indian party required to report that quality reports to the higher management? If there is a quality issue, then which party is able to resolve that issue? Who is responsible for that quality issues? So that is how it needs to be documented. See, these all things will drive you towards characterizing your Indian entity and foreign entity, right? Then warehousing. So how is warehousing and inventory management? Let me just also write inventory management is being done, right? So when the production are getting scheduled, once they are scheduled, then who manages the inventory, where it is stored, etc. Then marketing aspects. We already discussed that marketing type of functions in above, that in the previous video, where I explained that what aspects you should consider when you are drafting a marketing function, when you are drafting a function for the marketing activities, right? And then after sales and distribution logistics activities, and after sales support. Now see, you don't need to take a stress that this will be only the structure. In your case, there will be more detailed functions also. There could be more details. This is just a case that we have assumed here, and that is where we are just drawing up the functional profile here, right? Now similarly, under the risk, you should be able to understand that which party takes what type of risk. That is, in case it's a business risk, if it's an Indian entity which is a full-fledged manufacturer, as we saw under characterization part, right? If Indian entity is a full-fledged manufacturer, then it will also assume business risk. But if it is not a full-fledged manufacturer and all the risk in case of any loss happens, then it has been undertaken by the foreign entity, then it is not a full-fledged manufacturer, but it's a less risk manufacturer, manufacturer undertaking, contract manufacturer or toll manufacturer, whatever the characterization is, what we understood in the earlier video. So that is where you need to also write up the risk which are assumed, like capacity utilization risk. So who bears that capacity utilization risk cost, right? In case of idle manpower, which entity bears that risk? Then product liability risk, credit collection risk, foreign exchange risk, IP infringement, inventory risk. So these are the type of risk you need to document in your entire functional analysis report. And at last, you should also document the assets employed. So there could be various like machinery, machinery could be there. So plant and machinery, let me just put it that way. Furniture and fixtures, then softwares, or CAD CAMs, etc. So intangibles, correct. So this type of assets which are employed by the entity to undertake that transaction, so it needs to be covered. So generally in practical case, what I have seen here is that assets which are employed by the entity, so they will take entirely that block of assets which has been reported under the financials, and it will be shown here. That is also fine, you can show that, right? So when a justification comes up, then you can provide appropriate justification, but you can show here the entire block of assets which has been reported under the financials. I hope now that clarifies. Now when we are designing this functional profile, I have just put down the heads here. Why? Because I want you to understand that first you should be deciding on the head part, that what functions you are required to put under the main heading, and then after you have to draw up the functional profile, right? So now what needs to be done here is, now we'll be going using the AI. I have selected here two AIs, that is I am using two AIs, one is called ChatGPT and other is called Bard, right? You must be also using these two AIs, and these two are free AIs, right? You can access this AI free of cost, right? Now I will put a prompt here to make the AI understand our scenario, and I will also mention the list of functions for which I need to draw a functional profile, right? So I'll put a prompt here so that you can you will be able to know that how the functional profile, so how AI can help us in designing the functional profiles, right? Now let me just open that prompt. See, you can also, there is also one thing, you can also design the prompt in your manner. I have just designed this prompt considering the facts of this particular model. In your case, the prompt would be different, it could be more detailed also. As and when you start practicing this part, then you'll be able to understand that what type of prompt you should place. And it's not only one prompt, you can place multiple prompts one by one to crystallize and to narrow down and to improvise your functional profile output, right? Now I'm just putting this prompt. So in this prompt, basically what I have written here is that prepare a detailed functional profile, which I am telling it to the AI, right, with regards to the transaction of sale of raw material by holding company to its Indian subsidiary. So I am also defining the transaction here, right? I am not going to detail in too much detail of that raw material, which type of raw material is that or not. But I have written here sale of raw material by holding company to its Indian subsidiary, considering the following supply chain facts as well. Right, following additional supply chain facts as well. That is, holding company provides tech know-how and designs for production to the Indian company. Holding company also provides its brand name to Indian company. Holding company also provides instruction support. Indian companies engage in manufacturing of rubber tires. Indian company also sources raw material from third party and vendors. The income company sells the manufactured tire to third party. So this is how you can devise your prompt as per your supply chain. You can also break that prompts into various parts, so that it appropriately you can get the response from the AI, right? Now also, just to make further clarify, just to make understand AI well, what I have done is I have also written here that the tire manufacturing industry will be also applicable for understanding the other aspects of supply chain and drafting of functional profile. So what it means is, because I have also told AI that in case if so previously we have already mentioned here the function head, like if the AI has missed that function, so if any functions we have missed, then AI will be able to tell us that functions. I'm sorry for that, but AI will be able to tell us the functions, right? So this I have prepared a prompt, right? Then I have said to the AI that please include such aspects as well. So appropriately I'll get the output. In case if I have also missed some functions, then I have given a prompt that draft a detailed list of functions being performed by both the entities, as also the risk being undertaken. Being undertaken by the parties in the above transaction of purchase of raw material, right? This is the prompt which I have designed for A. Now I think this prompt is final, right? And also I have added that, also add other functional aspects as well, such as logistics, warehousing, price negotiation, marketing, etc. and after sales, right? So I'll give this prompt to both of the AIs, right? As you can see the magic right now happening, right? AI is writing the entire functional analysis for the Indian party as also for the overseas party. Now, AI may have assumed certain amount of facts, right, which may not be there in your case. So what you will do, you will read each and every line what AI has written and appropriately draft a functional profile, right? I think it has stopped here. I'll just click on continue generating so that it gives me the entire output. Now this is from ChatGPT. Now guys, why I consider ChatGPT to be more mature? Because it gives a proper type of answers, right? Under transfer pricing, prior to, if it also has the data prior to 2021, it doesn't make any sense under transfer pricing to go ahead with the 2022 data, because the fundamentals will always remain same, which were there before 2021 as well. So if you have free version of, if you are using the free version also, you can use it well for creating your functional profile. So it has beautifully created all the entire functional profile. First is of both the parties, that is holding company and Indian company, and it has also created the risk matrix for entire thing, right? I can also tell the AI to add additional. So in case if any of the functions which the AI has not included here, you can always tell the AI to add that those type of risk also, risk and functions. So I'll just write here add additional risk. As I can see that it has taken risk under raw material price, etc. But I will also tell the AI to add also, explain also on this particular risk which we have jotted here, right? So explain also risk, following risk being undertaken by the parties with regards to the international transaction of purchase of raw material by Indian party from overseas holdco, right? So you will see the magic, right? So it will give you answers, and accordingly you are required to draft. Once you need to check that matches with the fact or not, but it will give you a very close answer from what it understands, right? So that is where it can design the entire functional profile. Obviously, it will assume certain facts, because under the prompt you cannot write entire set of facts. Then you may get some vague answers also, and they are not reliable. And that is where AI cannot replace a human mind when you are dealing with transfer pricing subject, because it's a crucial subject. These things you are going to document in a transfer pricing report, which is going to be submitted to the government authorities, correct? So nobody would trust on this part. So that is where embrace yourself that you are using AI to draft the entire functional profile, right? Now this prompt was designed in a manner that it gives you this type of output, right? In your case, you can design prompt in a very detailed manner also, and without giving names of the companies, obviously without disclosing and having all this confidentiality, but you can also do that and you can get the best results from the AI, right? Now I am making this prompt on Google Bard also, and that is where I always say that Google Bard is a good AI, but it cannot give a mature solution as what the Chat GPT gives up. I'll just paste here and you can see the difference. Okay, so it has prepared a functional profile. See now, if you just see here, it has on a very broader view prepared a functional profile, that holding company is doing this function. What we have written, that only it has written with additional certain points, right? Then risk, then Indian company, then it's risk. It could be good to study this also. You should always use all the resources which are available with you to help you in drafting the functional profile. Now what used to happen with us before AI was that we used to write functional profile in 2017 2018 there were no AIs. So I had this case in one of the IT company, and where we took the interview for entire day for various teams, and at that point of time it took me 4 days to write the entire functional profile, just to draft that functional profile. So I used to hear the records, because I am not an IT guy, we are not a technical people, right? But they have told us technical things. So I also consulted my relatives also who were there in IT, that to understand that particular process I searched on the internet also, and that's how I drafted the entire functional profile of around 5 to 6 pages, capturing all the details of what they said in the interview, right? But now you are not required to take that much amount of pain. Obviously you will have to take functional interview to understand that what exact the supply chain is, what exact factual part is there in your case. But with the advent and with the help of this AI, I am sure that you won't spend more than 3 to 4 days in case if it's the first time for you to draft that entire functional profile. And once when you are pro in this, you can draft the functional profile within a day also. Once when you take supply chain interview with your this client, don't if that interview gets closed in 2 to 3 hours, and then after you just come gather certain facts, prepare the supply chain model at a very high overview, and then you give the prompt, and then appropriately you can check from the AI only. So you can take the data from AI, then you can check the facts, and then appropriately you can prepare this functional profile. Now what is relevant for us to take under this functional profile? I'll also go to that aspect, because now we have a ready write-up to put that in the TP report, right? So what things we should take first, right? So now our functional profile started with strategic decision making, right? So now they would have given something on strategic decision making. Is that included? Let me just strategic. No. So strategic decision making has not been included, right? So what we will do is strategic and corporate service function are some of the basic functions which will be there, and they have a definite terms, terminologies and applications. Now I will tell AI itself to draft the strategic decision making function. Please add the functions being performed by the parties with regards to undertaking of one, strategic decision making process, and second, corporate service functions, right? Service areas. Now these are all part of strategic functions which the holding company is doing, right? We don't need to write in this much in detail, right? But we need to understand that what part we can pick from this entire thing, and appropriately we can put that in the TP report, right? Now see, when you are using AI, please make sure that you cross verify everything. You put down whatever the relevant fact which matches the relevant conduct of the parties. Don't just try to try to play with some facts and put it in a manner that which does not depicts the real conduct between the parties. It is just for our easiness, because if I had to prepare that functional profile for supply chain, I had to write that entire supply chain, and appropriately, for this entire supply chain, I had to struggle to write entire things, right? And it would have taken day or 2 or 3 days, right? Now, if I'm using AI, I need to be smart in using AI, right? Now, so you can take this, okay. So now this you can take this under supply chain. Now, when you are designing a strategic decision making function, so you can the holding company engage in strategic planning to define overall direction, objectives, this, and formulation of strategy. Then the holding company also assesses its business portfolio and make decision regarding the resource allocations, investment strategy. So these are all strategic type of decisions, right? So this is the function of a holding company, right? There are many also. You can just write whatever is relevant in your case. Now, the Indian subsidiary aligns its strategic goals with those of holding company. The particular thing which we always will find in a holding subsidiary relationship, right? Which happens because holding company obviously controls the strategic power, strategic decisions with it, right? They understand and incorporate the holding company's overall strategic direction into this is the particular best output which has given strategic decision making. Like now, this is how you can function a long functional profile also or a shared also. I mean, whatever is relevant, you should put that part only. Okay. Similar in corporate service function, corporate service function again. So the holding company manages the financial functions, budgeting, financial reporting, and capital allocation. They ensure proper financial controls, monitor, and guidance to the Indian subsidiary, which may happen, so this they have spoken from, this they have generated from financial management, legal compliance, and human resource perspective, right? As I said, that corporate functions involves day-to-day management, which is legal compliance, financial management, human resources, operations, etc., admin operations, right? So they have generated this type of functions. You can take from here and appropriately, but you should be able to show that in case if that Indian entity is playing major role in that corporate service function, then the role of Indian subsidiary should be more compared to the holding company, right? In that particular function. So that is how you can draft that corporate service function as well. Same way for R&D designing, you will be finding that particular things upload, in that particular output of ChatGPT or Sebada, right? You should understand both the output from the both this AIs, and then appropriately you can use them in your TP report, right? I'm not going into detail part right now because then it don't get this overwhelmed by this thing. You can easily prepare that entire functional profile by the use of AI. Now your entire efforts of drafting that functional profile now eases down. Now only you are required to use your mind as an intellect to design that supply chain, put here relevant things, that is value of transaction, terms of transaction, functional profile, right? Then business risk, like similar manner as we did in functional analysis, you should always understand the business risk, which party is facing that actual business risk, which party is actually facing that forex risk. Alright, you should jot down here and you should write here in very detailed manner if possible, clarify more and more parts so that it is getting documented somewhere, right? So that in future if anything comes up from the transfer pricing assessing officer, you can always show that, right? So that is how you need to design this thing. Now we'll come to the other part. So now assets employed. So as I said that whatever assets have been employed here. So risk and assets employed, you have to write here the entire people do use the block of assets employed, and then appropriately they write here the assets which are being employed. Apart from that, you can also use the human resource. So you can explain on the human resource power, because they are also assets in the business. However, they are not there in balance sheet, but they are there in the business, and you can write about, so if it's an IT company or technical consulting company or technical consulting firm, one of the A is that, and you can also show human resource as an asset, and you can write a note also for that. You can also include that, see human resource, you can also include that in this entire functional analysis, and you can draft appropriately the write-up for that. Alright, so that is an asset which is being employed by the entity, right? This is the third part, right? Now we come to the other parts that so now we have done the nature and terms, functional analysis. Now we come to functional matrix. What is functional matrix? As I explained that it is a table. Now where I will put this table is when the functional analysis write-up entire ends. Then I'll put a table that is we call a functional analysis matrix or functional perform matrix showing function perform. Why this is important, I'll show you. First let me just draw up that table here. Now this is serial number. So this is basically summary of functions performed, right? So functions performed, and then you have to write both the parties' names. So that is holding company and this is your Indian party, right? Now 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then after it can go. So whatever functions you have documented, or the head functions what you have written here, you should write the same functions here. So this is a matrix that we are designing. This is basically a summary table. In in a very simple language, this is the summary table that you have to prepare once when your functional analysis write up ends, right? It's a concluding part. Production, right? So like I'm just taking 1-2 functions from here so that it is easy for you to understand. All right. So now let's just format it. Yeah. So now in this entire table, excuse me a moment. Okay, so in this entire table, this is called a matrix, right? Matrix is basically a table. Now strategic decision making. So if holding company plays a major role, right, in undertaking the strategic decisions under that particular transaction, then you should always write a high role, or people also use tick marks to express that the holding company has played, or the entity has played a higher role in undertaking this function, right? So it's a high role, and Indian party may play a very minimum role or limited role. You can write here limited, correct? So this will characterize your both the parties, that what characterization should be there. Now corporate service function may I think holding company plays a limited role and Indian party plays a very high role, right? Production, probably the only giving that support on that production or technical know-how, then it's a different story. But yeah, in case if they are not giving technical know-how, or only just they are giving a back-end support or low-end support, you can say here limited role. Or in case if they have so entire production is dependent on their technical know-how, then you can also choose to write medium or high support, right? I'll just for simplicity purpose, I'm just writing limited here, and here there is a high involvement of Indian party, correct? Now in case if in particular function, that is in marketing, if this is also this entity is also involved and this entity is also involved, then you can always write medium and medium, right? So this is where I am trying to draw up the functional profile of both the entities. Why I am doing this? So appropriately I will also prepare a risk matrix for particular once the risk thing is over. So once I write up the risk analysis, once I do the risk analysis, I will also prepare a table of this risk analysis, right? Where I will be putting down all the name of risk, all the headers, and then appropriately which entities, if the Indian entity is assuming higher risk, in particular this business risk. Okay, so if Indian party is taking higher risk and holding company is taking a limited risk, probably only on purchase purchase return part, then Indian party is taking higher risk, and as the principle says, the one party who takes higher risk should be remunerated at a higher basis, right? And that is where we have to draw up this risk matrix table also. On basis of this entire things, what we have to do is, so once when we have entire thing, we need to characterize these entities. So there will be the fourth part which we call as, so let me put down here, the fourth part which we call as characterization. Right. So characterization of Indian party, or first you can write of holding company, and then you can write the characterization of Indian party, correct? So holding company is just a supplier of raw materials, correct, and plays minimal role or limited role, you can say limited role in operations of manufacturing, Indian manufacturing unit, right? Operations of manufacturing as also in sales of Indian sales in India, right? So this could be a characterization of a holding company where I am just limiting that particular holding company to its role by saying that it's a supplier of raw materials, like it supplies the raw materials to me, so to the Indian entity. So that is why it's a supplier of raw material. And Indian party is, if it is taking also business risk and higher amount of risk, as we saw under that characterization part, that what characterization can be applied in under what scenarios. If Indian party is taking a higher risk, then you can always you can write here that Indian party is a full-fledged manufacturer bearing high risk. Okay, you can write also, you can explain that it bears high risk, it's high business risk, forex risk, etc. You can detail out that characterization, but it should not be equivalent to it should not again draw up a functional profile entirely, but just have 1-2 statements to explain the characterization. It's not entirely what I explained, that is only required to be written, but you can write, and you have to characterize the entity. That basically, why? Because you need to compare. So once when the part 2 starts of that analysis, you need to compare this entire thing, right, that with the uncomparable transactions, and that is where you will have to undertake that part. All right, I hope I am clear. And we will be also drafting, we'll be using this entire functional analysis in a report when we will be having the live TP documentation report. So we'll use the same thing and we'll put it down. So see, this is where you need to draft a functional analysis. Now I'll just give you one exercise that, just take one supply chain model. It could be simple, just take the simple supply chain model, and you can draw up the functional profile. And once when you have a when you prepare that functional profile, have the name of transaction above for what you are preparing, and have the supply chain model also, a picture of that simple supply chain model for any other transaction which you like, right? Prepare functional analysis, search for that, be resourceful. And how will you design functional profile? This entirely, just you can put that in Telegram group with your appropriate file, and we can take up one after one your functional profiles, and we can discuss that what improvisations needs to be done. I have explained you this entire drafting of functional profile in a smart way, right? I am not giving you I am not giving you that entire details that what it should contain, what it should not. You should be able to judge that, and you should be able to write that, right? I have also told you that AI, you can use the AI. So now that's an exercise. In weekly meeting, if you are able to draw up this entire functional profile, draw up that, share that in weekly meeting. I'll tell you to share the screen and explain us, and also rectify your functional profiles, right? It will be also learning at that point of time. All right, I hope this clarifies. I'll meet you tomorrow with the new particular part 2, wherein we are starting economic analysis, that is part 2 of ALP computation, right? Enjoy, keep learning, and relax. Thank you.